A lot of us, we have these baked in unconscious beliefs that our body responds to life in a specific way, and we're trying to force it to thrive, force it to have a good time. Meanwhile, it's actually afraid of who we are. Success is an experiential feeling of you being you, in my opinion. And that's going to look so different for everybody else.
And the mother being the earth, where we come from, nature. And there are natural laws that we have to follow. It's not that we're being punished if we sin or break the laws. It's that we're out of alignment with the natural way, things that naturally work, right?
What does it do to a human who grows up believing they're bad? If you have that belief, I'm bad, what I see in all the people that I've worked with and in my life as well, you play that out until you stop believing that you're bad. Most projectors don't actually even know how to be turned on because they've never actually experienced themselves yet. If you've not sat with somebody and been compensated for your own guidance, you haven't yet experienced what it feels like to be what a projector is meant to be here for.
Welcome to the Esoteric Alkhemy Podcast, a space where we explore the deeper layers of the human experience. I'm your host, Ben Figueredo, an alchemist, healer, and guide. Join me and my guests to the fringes of science and magic, the depths of the inner world. We'll explore topics related to spirituality, philosophy, sacred geometry, the occult, and more, with the aim of gaining deeper understanding of the reality of the self.
All right, we got another amazing episode for you guys. Today, my guest is Emma Joy with Ciderkin. Emma is a 3/5 emotional projector. She's an oracle, a surgeon of the psyche, and a midwife to the soul. She specializes in deep subconscious and nervous system transformation, helping women to expand into their full capacity, power, and self-expression. She explores the body, identity, relationships, energetics, and the internal shifts that make success inevitable. I had so much fun with this podcast. Talking to Emma was just so much fun. She has a lot to say, a lot of wisdom to share, and I know that you're really going to enjoy it. We both share a similar background in that we grew up in the Christian matrix and had to unravel those beliefs as we got older. So we dive into a little bit of that in her story and kind of how she deconstructed those beliefs and the path that it led her down and led her to doing the work that she is doing today, helping people deconstruct their own beliefs and limiting beliefs that are holding them back. We cover a little bit of that. We cover a little bit of human design, what it's like to be a projector and have that experience, what success means for a projector, and what she's doing now and what she has coming up. So I'm excited for you to dive in and listen to this conversation. Emma, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. This is a treat.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. You have so many fun tidbits of wisdom and experience to share, so I'm really excited to see where the conversation takes us today. Yeah, I mean, why don't you just start for people who don't know you, maybe they're new to you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing now, and yeah.
Just a short 5-minute conversation. Oh man, where do we start? So for, I guess, people who are finding this podcast, they've probably found it through maybe Instagram or YouTube or something like that. So you might know me from my human design content. But I've come from all sorts of interesting backgrounds. And as a projector, I've been observing the entire time. So I grew up in Zimbabwe in Africa. And I was homeschooled there. And then I did sort of high school in New Zealand and ended up studying nursing in Australia. So I've lived all over the world. Lots of transference there, if you know human design, as Shaw's. But I've kind of come from this background of wanting to understand people and wanting to help them, hence the nursing. But I found myself burnt out after about 4.5 years in emergency. I was an emergency nurse, and I felt so bitter towards people and humanity, and I started hating people, really, is where it came down to. And that's not my natural state. I'm the cross of planning, 3740. I want to take care of people. I love them. But I had this horrible experience of people really not wanting the depth of improvement that I wanted for them. So they'd just come in, get their pills, and go home. And the whole cycle would repeat, and you'd see the same people all the time. And I just felt so frustrated that this was how life is and this is how people are. And eventually I ended up going on this, soul searching experience, discovering a lot of various health things, and then more so the underpinning foundation of health, which I guess has led me to things like German new medicine, understanding the way the psyche perceives stress and then responds with symptoms. And that's brought me to my foundational tool or system, if you want to think of it that way. I use human design as a lens to understand someone's capacity, but then I use a tool called integrated somatic inquiry to actually help them get there. Because for a lot of us, we have these baked in unconscious beliefs that our body responds to life in a specific way, and we're trying to force it to thrive and force it to have a good time. Meanwhile, it's actually afraid of who we are. Like, a lot of people have what I call kind of like autoimmunity of the soul. Now, I don't actually believe in autoimmunity as a thing, but it's like you're attacking yourself for being you. That's kind of how the psyche seems to express, right? So it's like, well, for me to be a projector and to rest enough, I feel like that's a threat to my survival, because if I'm perceived as lazy, if I'm perceived as not like pulling my weight, if I'm perceived as all these things and I get kicked out of the tribe, then I'm going to not survive as a human being. So there's this whole perception of like, I'm built this way and I have these needs, but I can't really live like that because that's a threat to my survival. So that's kind of the realm that I work in now with my one-on-one work with people. We go into the psyche and we kind of unravel that perceptive lens so that the body can see things clearly and can actually really be itself, essentially. So, there's 500 million things I've left out there, I'm sure, but that's a starting point.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's there is a whole lot there that it would probably you could speak for hours on, which is great. So I'd love to hear your experience growing up. So you grew up Seventh-day Adventist, and you were born in Zimbabwe. Were your parents missionaries, or like how did you?
Yeah, a lot of people think that. No, so my dad was like 5th generation Zimbabwean. He had ancestors come over, a very long time ago. And then my mum, her parents came from Europe in their 20s, and they were in Cape Town in South Africa. So they were really just locals, colonizers, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, I guess my parents really just, that was their world, that was their life, that was all their families were there. I've still got family there now. And I grew up mostly on farms. So I grew up on a game farm. We moved a lot because my dad would only take work where he got Saturdays off, and that's really uncommon. A lot of farming people are, Sunday worshippers, as we call them. So, he'd work in a job and then they'd be like, no, this just isn't working, go find something new. So we moved a lot. And at the very end, when I was about 10 or 11, we left. There was all of the political unrest, and what they had is they had war veterans that Mugabe, the president at the time, promised land to if they'd fight for him. And he didn't have the land, obviously, to give them. He didn't have the money. He was busy making solid gold toilets, apparently. That's what he had in his house. But anyway, eventually, from a lot of pressure, he gave away the different European people's farms. So the war veterans would come on with their guns and shoo you off, and I think they gave us like 48 hours to leave or something like that. So that's how I ended up in New Zealand. So I've had you've heard me talk about my views on what's going on in the world currently and how beliefs impact that and how outside input impacts that, the global elite, whatever you want to call them. And I feel like I've had a very interesting life so far where I've been able to observe the impact of various aspects of that in different realms. Not a lot of people know the type of poking and prodding that happened in Africa to create the circumstances that currently exist. They're not just what happens with people. I think I'm really passionate about this. A lot of people look at humans as this parasite to the earth. We're so problematic. We just do all this evil stuff. And it's really not true at all. The amount of time, effort, research, resources, finances that have gone in to create the schmozzle that we live in, it's significant. And I know this firsthand. It took a lot of tension and pressure to create that political shitstorm in Zimbabwe. And the native people who worked with us were devastated about the situation because there was a harmony between, the different people groups that worked well, and it actually benefited everybody. When you create all of this internal tension and angst, it doesn't actually help anybody. They suffer more so than we do because we can bugger off. There's places that you can go to if you have more resources, but for a local, they know what sort of brutality that they're going to be faced with. And that was in check when there were different infrastructures in place. So the way that I perceive the world and where we're at today, I feel like has been really blessed through these experiences growing up, where I've actually been able to kind of taste some of what's going on in the world from a really interesting lived perspective.
Yeah. I love that you have your Mexican Coke.
Yeah. Cheers to Kazi.
Is that that's the real cane sugar?
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. You can't really find normal sugar Coke over here. The Mexican
I
stuff.
know.
It's so bizarre.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's like a really great perspective on, your childhood and being able to see all those different things. And yeah, it's like, for me, I mean, I grew up in America, right? And I feel like now, over the last, probably since 2020 is really when I started paying attention to a lot of things outside of my own world, realizing, oh, everything we're told about the rest of the world is probably not the truth. Maybe like, a little bit of it. It's just mixed up in there. And it's crazy to think that like, oh, every country has their own like news source and they can be telling us whatever they need to tell us.
Yeah.
And so in America, we get told that pretty much everybody else sucks and they're the bad guys, they're evil, we need to go conquer them, we need to tame whatever, And hearing different stories, different perspectives from people who actually have been in these other countries is so eye-opening and beautiful. So thank you for sharing that, and we can dive into that maybe a little more. So I think I want to follow that thread of just so you have this view on the world. How did you, growing up in that Seventh-day Adventist, they consider themselves Christian, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So growing up in that, where did you kind of deviate, and what was that story as far as questioning
what
that?
Almost conversion story. So I was very devoted growing up. Like I was the no sex before marriage kid. I was the read the Bible an hour a day kid. I was like, locked in. We're making this happen. But I could never really seem to get the experiences that I read about or that I heard about, oh, I just felt this amazing spiritual thing. And I have theories about this because if you think about the solar plexus in human design, it's said to be the spiritual center, right? And for me, mine's defined. It's unconsciously defined, but it is defined. And I wonder if there is this predisposition to amplification and access of spirituality for an undefined solar plexus that I'm never going to be able to feel because I've got this frequency going on here and somebody undefined is kind of filtering through all of the frequencies. This is something I've observed in clients and people that I know and things like that. So I had my emotional way of going up and down and trying to like access this God that everybody else is talking about. And I remember going through bouts of just feeling like, am I doing it wrong? What even is the thing that I'm doing? Now, as a side note, as part of my upbringing, my mum had basically the entire Bible as audio tapes. So I grew up listening to the Bible back to front, upside down, inside out. So I had this very foundational access to a lot of things that I don't think most Christians have. Most Christians don't really know the Bible very well, that I have experienced. Like, I have a lot of friends still in the Christian sphere. I know a lot of people who are nowadays getting back into Christianity or getting into it for the first time. And a lot of those people have tiny little fragments of the Bible that they are aware of. And then there's this Jesus figure, right? But for me, I had this entire, Old Testament all the way through to the New Testament, back and forth, different, the King James version versus the other one, and all these different. I was very much in the nitty gritty, you could call it like first line Christianity from a very young age. I remember coming over to New Zealand and completely decimating all of the Bible quizzes at Sabbath school because, there was just such a deep knowledge of the Bible in my passive brain. I think that's something that I'm still passionate about to this day, because I don't think you can divorce Jesus, Christianity, God through the Abrahamic lens from the Bible itself. So in light of that, I believe that you should be able to have a source text that's actually useful and that gives you the ability. It's kind of like dating somebody and you don't know anything about them and you don't try to know anything about them. You just want to feel them. I feel like a lot of Christians kind of approach Christianity in that way. And it's like, well, you have this whole book that tells you who God is through this lens. Why would you avoid getting to know who God is through this lens if you say you love him? Wouldn't you want to know what he expects as loving devotion or what he is? So all of these things to me make very logical sense. And this thread kind of took me on this journey of, at one point, wanting to understand why it was that the whole of the Jewish world rejected Jesus as the Messiah. Because I was like, okay, well, if they have the deepest foundation possible, because they're literally the people studying this, they do this for their life's work, right? They study the Torah, they study the Talmud, they study all of this stuff. They're the closest you can get to God intellectually and hopefully spiritually, whatever. Why did they not see Jesus as the Messiah? So I went down this huge rabbit hole and started listening to rabbis who were basically trying to reconvert Messianic Jews. And they were having all of the arguments why this man wasn't the Messiah, why he didn't fulfill any of the Messianic prophecies that are carried through in the Old Testament. And the prophecies that Christians think he did fulfill were never considered messianic. They weren't even considered prophecies, some of them. So it's really interesting to look at it from that perspective, where you can see, oh, there's a lot that's actually been transposed into the Bible. You can like read stuff out of the Bible that you want it. You can kind of make it mean whatever you want. And people do this. This is why there's like millions of different, Christian denominations, because there's a different angle that you can put on anything. So this,
one of my
and I think it's
one of my favorite memes is like these stick figures. They're like at a church meeting, and the guy's like drawing on a whiteboard, and it's got like this whole branch, and it's like at the beginning of the branch is like, here's Jesus, and then it's like go through the branch, and it's like one particular branch. It's like, here's our church. This is where we finally got it right, And it's like all these different ideas.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it's meant to do. Maybe that's, I don't really have an answer for that, but I'm kind of like, it's like you don't have the option of breathing in water. You breathe in air. There's only one option. It's not like if you look at nature isn't weaselly like this. Nature doesn't sneak around with lots of different interpretations of things. It's like you cut your leg off, you're going to bleed. Okay? You break a bone, it's going to need to... It's very black and white in a lot of ways, that it seems like what I've come to now is that Abrahamic worldview is a transposition onto nature that isn't... It's like a graft that doesn't actually naturally exist. So that's where we get legalism from. Our whole legal system is based on the, Judeo-Christian way of understanding law. And because of that, you actually have laws that, aren't really laws and don't make sense, or you can loophole them. They're not laws of nature. And this is where I came to. I mean, I was going to I was going to Bible studies with Jews. I was going the direction of like, well, if that's the source, why would I dilute it with this Christian version of, this Messiah that doesn't actually fit into anything biblical? Wouldn't I just go to the source of the God and the truth and the laws and, everything like that? And then this one moment kind of destroyed it all. I remember listening to a rabbi, and he was explaining the law about if a woman wanted to divorce her husband, right? And she could only do it if he actually was okay with that, like if he agreed to it, basically. But the way they interpreted the law was that they believe his higher self agrees to it. So even if he doesn't, she still gets to do. And I was like, the fuck is going on? That is what? And it really, it crumbled all of that legalism for me. And you can bring that to the whole, this is how sin and healing and all that sort of stuff works as well within that system. It's like, well, you get a chicken, you put your badness on the chicken, and then you kill the chicken and you're good now. The chicken's the bad one and it's dead. So we're good. Like we're all, nothing to see here, folks. But if you think about the human spirit and what creates goodness or removes badness from a human spirit, it's not a chicken. And essentially, if you look at the Christian lens, Jesus becomes the big chicken. And this is where I have this phrase that feels like my catchphrase, but the consequences of belief. The people who come and work with me, I'm unraveling beliefs like the ones through the Christian lens from their physical body that have been causing all sorts of a shit show in their life, really. What does it do to a human who grows up believing they're bad and they have to pray enough times a day to be good? If you have that belief, I'm bad, what I see in all of the people that I've worked with and in my life as well, you play that out until you stop believing that you're bad. So what would it be like for an entire world of people that didn't get born into this belief system that said, I'm bad? What would it do for the creative human expression if we lived out as honest and innocent humans? And that's, I sent you a PDF that kind of breaks down the entire way that these belief systems that we take for granted, it's actually a background frequency, even for people who haven't grown up in the church, who haven't grown up as Christians, who don't even see themselves as believing in any form of God. You're still in this background frequency soup of the Christian worldview, the lens. And even people who don't believe in God, it's like, well, I couldn't not believe, or I couldn't go down that, I couldn't do it, where is morality without the Bible? Really? We're asking these questions. We've forgotten what it is to be human. It's been a very thorough infiltration of the psyche, in my opinion, if you look at the Christian belief systems and how it affects everything. So I did, with my devotion and dedication, I did almost become convert to Judaism, because I saw it as, if you're going to go to truth, you're going to go to the source of the truth, and you're going to do it thoroughly. And then it completely disintegrated, and that really led me to discovering everything else that I've discovered and having a very interesting grip on reality.
That is awesome. I love that. Yeah, it's like when you explore, okay, because Christianity didn't come until after Judaism. And then, that went to the Catholicism first, and then Protestantism come out of that. And, like you were saying, most people today, they read the Bible from our current lens, our current perspective, understanding nothing about how the world was, where it came from, what they were understanding at the time. And so we read our own perspective into it. And I think there's a quote from the Talmud, which is the first handful of books of the Old Testament, and maybe some other things in there. But it says like we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And that's such a profound statement to make, that it's like we are a certain perspective, and whatever, like you're saying, all those beliefs and programming that we hold, we're going to interpret whatever information comes through that lens.
Totally. Yeah. And when you experience yourself as bad for various reasons or not good enough, or, there's a lot of different perspectives that we can go into. But when you see life that way, even the way you see God is going to be super impactful. I had a little post on my Instagram about that, where if your perspective of God is that he's judgmental, he's harsh, he's got, a big stick in his hand, he's going to make you burn in hell for eternity, which is a very long time to suffer. If you have all these perspectives of the creator of the universe, because it's something you're worshiping, you begin emulating what you worship. And if you think of a lot of the Baptist Christians or whatever they are, that what was created into the world and brought forth into the world as a result of worshiping this specific concept, it's frightening. And this is where, some people have the view that it's benign. Christianity's maybe they're just misperceiving things, but it's not harmful. I personally see it as harmful. And you can look at history and you can see all the harm that was done. You look at even just looking at the Catholic Church and the awful, there's so much to say there. But what a lot of people don't understand is that they were using religion as a weaponized tool against people. They were literally, you could pay the priest to get your loved ones moved from the bottom of hell to a less hot place in hell. They were literally, when we think of tax nowadays and we think of how much, energetic harvesting is done through tax, just from the monetary system, they were doing something like that and worse through the church back in the day, through belief systems. Give us your money, give us your resources, give us your energetic capacity for some hypothetical concept that we've convinced you is true. We haven't actually convinced you. We've forced you by the blade of a sword to believe. You get burnt if you try and keep your old ways, which are pagan and evil. The amount of women that were burnt at the stake because, I think this is another thing that is not perceived very well, because there's lots of beautiful trad wives who are making sourdough and they're Christian, and it's lovely. But what's really quite evil within the Christian worldview is this hatred for nature and for natural states and for natural functions. And along with that becomes the woman. A woman is kind of governed by nature and ruled in a way by nature, and her expression throughout the Christian lens is very constricted and very subjugated. And this was something that I found really just frustrating, because for me, there is not enough of a world concept within Christianity to really feed a people, to nourish a society. I've been studying Taoism and Taoist health, energetics, and Chinese medicine and things like that for on and off as a side gig for a very long time. And there's a concept there within the framework where it's cohesive. It encompasses childbirth, child rearing, but also wisdom, but also discipline, but also, it's a very interesting way to look at the world and spirituality compared with something like Christianity that is pray to this Jesus man who got crucified and you'll be good. Okay, but what about childbirth? This is literally why we're in this state that we're in right now with the dysfunctional healthcare system. All your witches were burned, my people. You don't have access to the wisdom that was a birthright at one point. We've kind of, even medicine itself was seen as something outside of the church for a very long time, So we're dragging our sorry asses out of the dark age despite Christianity, not because of Christianity. And I think people get this around the wrong way all the time, and it gets me fired up, apparently.
I love it. Yeah, that is so true. It reminds me of, have you read the Essene Gospels?
Some of them, yeah. Yeah, there's health stuff in there, right?
Yeah. So those are part of, I think, what was discovered in the Nag Hammadi scriptures or in the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff. These were hidden by the Essenes. So the Essenes were actually a group or a sect of people that existed even before Jesus came on the scene, and he was actually, they say that he actually became an Essene. He was trained by them. I also believe that during his missing years, he went over to India and Tibet and trained in Buddhism and Hinduism, and learned that. That's kind of probably where he had his awakening and connection to oneness, to source. But he came back and joined the Essenes to serve his people. But he in Jesus, it is recorded as talking about the way they saw things is that they had the Father, right? But in our modern Bible, they got rid that's all they have, is that we went to this monotheistic thing. Which, by the way, if we actually went back to that time and Christians went back to that time and saw that Jews and Hebrews, like, they didn't just worship one God. They had a whole pantheism just like everybody else, because they came out of Egypt and that's the religion that they brought with them. But anyway, so we only get the Father, and then it's a very narrow view of the Father. But they actually talk about that there's the Father and the Mother. The Father being the heavenly Father, mostly represented by the Son. And if we're thinking in a natural health context, it's the actual physical Son. That they actually believed, and a lot of spiritual traditions actually believe, that the Son is the physical manifestation of God. And the Mother being the earth, where we come from, nature, and that there are natural laws that we have to follow. And sin is actually not, when we break these laws, it's not that we're being punished if we sin or break the laws. It's that we're out of alignment with the natural way things that naturally work, right? Like you were saying, if you cut your leg, you're going to bleed. And so he lays out. There's a story in there where he goes to a leper camp, and it was like, hey, he didn't actually heal them. He was like, hey, I'm going to show you how you can heal yourself. And he gave him all these things. It's basically like, if you get in line with natural laws, if you, I forget, they had like, basically there's like 4 angels, the angel of fire, or the angel of the sun, the angel of, I think it's fire. It relates to the elements, right? The angel of air, the angel of water, the angel of the earth, teaches them to take the earth, mix it with the angel of water. You get mud, you can, rub that on yourself. Obviously grounding is part of it, touching the earth, getting in the frequency. He talks about like getting in the river naked and bathing in, broad sunlight, so that it's like covering in and you're breathing. He even teaches them how to do an enema by taking a gourd and hollowing it out. And apparently the vine of the gourd is hollow.
Wow.
So you take that and shove it up your bum, and then you take the angel of water, and the angel of water cleans out your insides. And it was like something like for every 7 years of sin, living out of alignment, living in this state of disease, you have to spend 7 days, fasting and cleansing and doing these enemas to help reorient your system and cleanse your body of the disease. So it's just so fascinating, taking out that how, the church really, it really goes back to empire, because, Constantine, when he integrated Christianity into the empire, because they saw that it was growing and pretty soon it was going to get out of control, they had to rein it in and then make it exactly what they needed it to be. They eliminated the feminine, right? They eliminated all of that and said, no, it's just the Father and the masculine side of it, which is us, the empire. We're going to be the ones in control. And the only way you can get access to the Heavenly Father is through us, through the priests, through our priests, in this whole control mechanism. So yeah, it's just maniacal.
Yeah, it's a brutally thorough process. It's been incredibly thorough, because we wouldn't have the world that we have today, without a belief system that has been so useful. I think there's this kind of self-limiting factor that the feminine brings in. By being chaos and by being unpredictable, there is a nature that is ungovernable about it, I want to say. But within right relationship, that brings balance to this constant progressive movement within the masculine. And by removing that, it's like, well, I've got a lot of things to say, good and bad, about capitalism, but you have this dysfunctional capitalism where we're just going for it. Where? I don't know. Why? I don't know. We're just going, And people think that this is the natural state of humans. It's not. This is a dysfunctional, disembodied state. This is where we have, this is the other thing I'm really passionate about, is the unity of the sexes creates a battery whereby you can literally create the entire universe, in my opinion. You've got this polarity thing going on. But with the situation that you have in the world right now, you don't have healthy women and you don't have healthy men. And it comes back literally to what you've been talking about. With this, you take one of the two, whether that's overexpression of the feminine or overexpression of the masculine, like we have in Christianity, and you've got chaos, you've got pain, you've got suffering, you've got a battle where there shouldn't be one. There should be this, it's a battery. Think of a battery. You've got the positive and the negative, and it creates energy. And then you do lots of things with that. That's what it should be. But instead, it's like this discordant frequency. And people think that's natural too. And it's really not. We're not naturally like this. There's a lot of harmony between sexes. There is an amazing capacity for creativity when there's the harmony between those two energetics. And I think we're seeing that come back internally for people. There's enough people that have been really putting in the work, because it takes work. And that will reflect over time. But I do think we're going to be seeing like a broader gap between the people that are doing that work and the people that aren't, because the world's going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I was just thinking about that the other day. We have this whole feminist movement that's like, all these women, like, we can do exactly what men can do. And, they're going to these corporate jobs and doing all these things. And now I feel like they're starting to realize how much they hate that, and how much it's really not maybe what they wanted to do, or kind of oppressive. Not that they can't, but it's also like the beauty. I feel like I am a feminist in the sense that it's like the real beauty of women is that they can do the things that men can't do. Like, we have different roles. Like you said, there's that polarity there. Being the creation, if we look at it from a primal perspective of like the womb of creation, and it might be a void at first, it might be chaotic. If we want to take the Christian story, at the beginning was, the chaos, the waters, and it was just, this potential. It's like pure potential. I love in the Hindu story, they say that there's Shiva and Shakti, right? These two polarities, the masculine and the feminine, and the Shiva is the masculine, right? And Shiva is like the banks of a river, and Shakti is the water that flows. If it just goes everywhere, it could cause a flood and destroy things and cause problems. So Shakti provides direction. It provides that masculine container, if you will, to help, the energy flow in a certain direction. But also, if we look at it, I was saying this in my mind as you were talking about, capitalism things. What I see today and what I hate about, our world and how it's come is like we have all these straight lines everywhere. It's just like perfectly straight lines. We have canals that are just, they just go in a straight line. We have pipes of water coming into our house, just straight lines, 90 degrees, and it's like, yeah, that might be the most efficient, might be the most cost effective. But if we look at it from an energetic point of view, taking away the natural flow, because even in a river, the water does shape where it goes.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the masculine that decides where the river's going. It just helps provide the container to keep the energy contained and concentrated. But then we have all these, straight lines. And if we look at it from an energetic perspective, we know that straight line, it's totally out of sync with nature, and it destroys the health of the water. It destructures the water. So yeah, we really need to find the balance. And I do think that it's coming back for sure. I think that it's making its way back.
Yeah.
And if we look at it from a human design perspective, well, it's actually broader than human design, because Carl Jung talked about it too. But, moving, like how we've been so much in that left side, the left brain for, the seven-centered being, and for the last, how many thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Where before that, we were very right-brained. We were very much more in tuned, connected to nature, was more about feeling and sensing the energy,
Yeah.
But with the mental capacity that developed, we moved more into the masculine to I think, develop that.
I query this, because if you look at the structures that were built pre-Christian, if you look at those massive temples, they scream like harmonized polarity. And
Yeah.
those were massive cities, right? So those were huge infrastructure creations. And I struggle to stomach the idea that it's one or the other. We can only be in a really well, expressed left brain or this side of things. And I think this is why, for me, it's maybe, obsessive of me, but I see that there has been somebody tweaking the coding, if you want to put it like that. Because you wouldn't need a response like feminism if you didn't have the Christian. There were thousand plus years of oppression of women in a very specific way that, it took such a long time to get to the feminist state. I'm not a feminist. I don't believe that that's what we need to be doing, but I'm not a feminist in the sense that I don't believe that we need to require double income to survive as families. I don't believe we need to require women to work. I think that there should be freedom, and there are a lot of women that have a lot to offer the world. But it's what the world has, the way that the world has responded and basically turned women into men. We've lost something so precious that is maybe going to take a long time to get back. And you see that in architecture, you see that in these like concrete boxes that we're building nowadays. It's like, where is the softness? Where's the whimsy? Where's the cherry on top that we deserve? You look at nature.
Where are the curves?
Yeah, there's an abundance in nature. There isn't this like, oh my God, I'm going to be stressed out and surviving all the time. You wouldn't have reproduction of anything if that was the state. And it's kind of like us as humans have gone into that state of, oh my God, I'm not going to survive. And so you don't have people reproducing, actually, like that's declined. And you have these weird looking boxes where everything is straight and cornered, and you have unhappy people. It's not.
Mhm.
I think of those spiders that they gave drugs and like they made all these really messed up webs, and it's like that's what we're doing with our infrastructure. And you can really see, I think there's kind of like a feedback loop that comes back from what we're visually exposed to. It affects how we experience ourselves and our spirit. There's actual science somewhere. I'm not going to try and cite it, but it talks about how children develop and how being exposed to beauty affects them. But then there's also that feedback loop of when you don't feel good in yourself, you're not going out there and creating the beautiful stuff. So we're being attacked from every angle. Get me a tinfoil hat. But it truly, like the deeper you dig, I'm not saying anything new here, really. There's a lot that has been going on for a very long time that a lot of people know about nowadays. Architecture reflects that, in my opinion. And if you go back to, the old temples and the way things were built, we have the capacity to harmonize and create heaven on earth, I believe. And that's why we need to believe that's possible. If we believe that the earth is faulty, we're all sinful, we're all really just shit people, this is something that with our creative capacity as humans, we will then go out and create a world like that. So that's why I have a problem with that very foundational aspect of Christianity. It's just not useful and doesn't actually make you a better person. Praying to God doesn't make most people better. It maybe hides their badness or gets them forgiven for the naughty things they've done.
Yeah. So were you, with that thread, I totally agree with you on like the architecture. Have you heard of biogeometry?
Yeah.
It's did I freeze? Did we freeze?
Yeah, just for a second, but you got you back.
I was just saying, I totally agree with you on that point. And then the architecture, especially in the old world. I've trained in this emerging science called biogeometry. It's coming out of Egypt, and a lot of the ancient Egyptian temple sciences. And yeah, he shows that a lot of that old stuff, they're actually designed in harmony, that the shapes that were the way they were built, the energetics of it were actually beneficial to life. And what's happening now, it's kind of similar, kind of overlaps a little bit with feng shui.
Cool.
But what we're seeing now with all the square boxes and stuff, it really deadens the frequency and the energy, even of our own aura, and causes a more detrimental frequency, if you will, that doesn't support life. So what you're saying is spot on. Like we can actually bring harmony by the way that we're building our architecture and our buildings. And even a bird, like a bird's nest, the way they build it, it actually creates a very beneficial energy that's the same as like the energy of power spots on the earth.
That's so
cool. Where there these healing power spots. Yeah.
It just makes sense, right?
It does, yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're going to be in charge of the rebuild.
That's one of my goals.
Brilliant. I love that. That's so cool though. Yeah. I feel like we have the intelligent capacity as humans for that. Why are we not why are we not doing that? But yeah, what a resource. That's so cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. Oh man, this conversation. I love it so much. We could continue along this path. I feel like this is a good transition to maybe talk a little bit more about health and well-being and how you see it. Because I definitely see beliefs being a big part of that, like what you believe about yourself. I think that most diseases come as a result of what our subconscious programming is, our subconscious beliefs manifesting and trying to show us. And I think you probably know more about and can speak to German New Medicine than I can. I've only done a little bit of research, but I think that's kind of the underlying premise, isn't it?
Yeah, German New Medicine is one of the biggest gifts we have access to in our time, I believe, if you want to marry science and art, basically, because we have over 40,000 CT scans that essentially prove the connection between your lived experience and then your symptom expression. So we actually have a map of the brain where we can see which tissue layer is being affected and what the conflict shock was. The German New Medicine is the science of a stress expression. I know people listening might have heard of Louise Hayes and the different beliefs and what they relate to in the body. The scientific expose of that we have the embryonic tissue layers and what part of the brain they affect. So what I'm talking about there is like connective parts of you, like your skin and whatnot, and how we experience connectivity socially and with the people close to us, and what that kind of gets expressed like in our skin. Also the aliveness parts of us, so what's keeping us alive, our lungs, things like that. When we have frights that endanger our life, and then we get lung expressions, we have this exposed in such a clear way that you can literally go, okay, I've got this symptom, I'm going to go look at the literature, which is free online, by the way. If you go to learninggnm.com, I think is what it is, just Google German New Medicine, and you have all of the different things that you could imagine that you can go and look up, and it'll be related to a specific tissue layer. You can go and look up what that tissue layer what it kind of governs, and what conflict themes are involved. For example, acne can be, I feel attacked, so I'm going to create a thicker skin. I'm literally building thicker skin. And then when I don't need it anymore, it turns into pus and gets squeezed out. Disgusting, but very useful. It's like the body is so clever. It's doing its thing, but we don't really understand it like that. So we're doing all of the, retinol creams and whatever else, and we're trying to get rid of these symptoms. Meanwhile, our human spirit is having an experience that is traumatizing us. So for me, I spent a lot of my life in the health sphere, and I've progressively gone more and more towards the core of the issue, which I believe is the way that we perceive life. So if you grew up with a lot, maybe like a really critical parent or critical people in your life, you may be more predisposed to feeling attacked and to having something like acne or some other experience symptom-wise that really relates to feeling not good enough, like you just can't do it right, all of these different things. Now, none of that is really true about you, but if you have a perceptive lens that's looking for that proof throughout your life, and you're basically waiting for somebody to tell you you didn't do a good enough job, and you're interpreting things that aren't even critiques as critiques. What I am really fascinated by is being able to shift that perceptive lens. So that's where the integrated somatic inquiry process comes in, where it's like you're getting the body and you're putting it in a moment in time where it was triggered, and you're reorganizing the perception of the body in that moment. So as you're working through the process, the body is starting to realize, oh, I thought their facial expression was proof that I wasn't good enough. But can somebody's facial expression actually ever take away my worth or give it to me? And then what do I live like when I'm trying to get somebody's face to move a certain way to prove that I'm good enough? Well, I pander to them, I people please, I do all these things, and I literally become less enough than I was to start off with. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And when the body no longer perceives facial expressions as the source of worth and enoughness, it goes off, and people have completely different experiences where they just don't actually recognize, maybe they're critiqued by something and their body just doesn't do anything. There's no sensations because the body's not actually looking for, I'm not enough. Who's perceiving that I'm not enough? It's like, it's not wired like that anymore. So it's just such an interesting thing to really kind of play around in somebody's psyche and to realize, okay, how much of life is actually real? How much of it is a perceptive layer that is movable? It's really playing with the matrix, in my opinion. You're kind of like getting into the coding within people's own minds. Yeah, and that's really I've seen it now enough times where you do that and then you get symptoms because the conflict that they've been having has resolved. So their body expresses the symptoms and then they kind of figure it out. One of my clients has had a really stressful and fearful time in the last couple of weeks, and she's now coughing. She's also been able to voice her truth, and so she's had a sore throat and a cough. That's survival, speaking a truth, getting a truth out. And now she's resolving the symptoms because she no longer believes she's unsafe and can't speak. So you literally see how the body reorganizes itself in relation to reality when we work with the mind. I think that's, I'm so passionate about that side of things, but I'm also passionate about I really don't like mental homework. there's a lot of frameworks that require you to be aware of your thoughts, to notice when you're thinking something critical or negative, or to notice when you're being treated, whatever it is. There's a lot of energy involved in that. I think that's why I like working with the body and the unconscious, because when you rewire that, you don't actually have to do anything. You just go out and do your thing. You just live your life, and, there's no constant micromanaging of your own mind. And I feel like that's when you really are returned to being a human, to being in your natural state. You don't need to hold it all together like a tense, and that's where a lot of illness really comes from, is that holding it all together and tension. Life flows through us. Traumatic experiences flow through us. We can't control what's going to happen. But when we build a story about it and then we project that story into the future and then we keep living it out, that's when it's stuck inside of us. That's when it gets into the symptom side of things. We're pretty resilient as humans in the grand scheme of things.
That's so cool to hear that from your perspective. Yeah, because like what you're saying about the mental game. I mean, our conscious mind can only process something like 40 bits per second or something, where the unconscious can process like 11 million bits per second.
Yeah.
If we want to put numbers on it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, you think about, the amount of energy that it takes to think about something and try to change it. And from my own perspective, I did that for so long. I can
Same.
think my way,
Oh
through
my
this
gosh.
problem.
Yeah.
And I still do it, out of habit, for sure.
Well, I think especially, you're a projector, I'm a projector. We want to understand how things work. Like, we want to kind of figure it out and get our head around it. So I think there's a lot of value to having that awareness. I think being able to tap in and out of it is where you keep yourself human. Because I know I've lived in spaces where I've been I actually had this experience with I was really unwell at one point and ended up in the emergency room. This was back in, I think, 22, just from stress. And I went and saw a herbalist afterwards, and he was basically like, this is your homework. You're allowed to read fiction and only fiction that is gripping. And like, if you can't put the book down, that's the book you read. If you have to push through anything, you get rid of the book and you just have to read stories. And he basically, what he was doing with my nervous system is he was giving me structure and discipline around bringing my nervous system back into a state of rest and digest. I was so stuck in mentally figuring things out. And, this was around the COVID time. Like, I had time on my hands and I was studying everything under the sun. I don't think I'd read a story in years. So he was basically forcing my body to relax and using story and myth and all of these things as a medicine. He gave me herbs as well, but it was this, we can get, and I see this a lot in people, we can get so afraid of something bad happening that we're constantly in our head figuring out what thing that I have to do better. What do I have to not do? What do I have to do better? What do I have to like? And it's like, we're not even human anymore. We're just like a brain function that's on overdrive and can't switch off. So I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it's a gift and a curse, wanting to understand.
Yeah, wanting to mentally, figure everything out. And I don't think, our mind is a beautiful thing, right? I don't think that it's evil or that we need to just ignore it altogether. It has a specific purpose.
Definitely.
But yeah, getting into our body and allowing that, because it's interesting, speaking of COVID, back when all that was happening, I, did a lot of research and came across people that were talking about it. And I realized, through certain studies that, viruses aren't actually what we think they are. And they're not, they might not even be anything, because the whole, process that virologists use to prove, or show that there's a virus isn't congruent, with what they they say. I can't remember all the details, but there's a lot of evidence now. I mean, even there's a virologist in Germany, actually, Stephen Lanka, who did a whole, he basically did the process that virologists use to isolate viruses from a sick person's culture or whatever, but without an actual sick person, and he's got the same results. So it's like, how am I getting the same results without, it's because of the poisons and the toxins that they're using to kill cells, basically, and then they're calling these particles viruses. So anyway, my point was that once I realized that and I stopped believing that there were these scary germs out there that can get me sick, I really haven't been sick since then. And even when my whole family supposedly got COVID, they were sick with this. They were pretty bad. They were in bed, just really sick. And I was just like the whole time, like, I'm not getting sick. Like, I'm just not, because and I feel like, yes, it has to start consciously, like we're aware of it. Maybe it doesn't have to start, but it can start consciously. But that's not necessarily going to do anything. Our body, our unconscious mind has to receive it, has to download it and incorporate it, integrate it into our program, right?
Yeah.
There is something to be said of like those two things working together. I'd love to ask you what you think, because the more I study and learn through different systems, human design and everything, I've come to think that what we consider our unconscious mind is really our subconscious mind is really our body, our body's intelligence, our design crystal in human design, language, that side of the consciousness. So we have these, conscious mind, unconscious mind and body. What are your thoughts?
I think that makes so much sense, because I feel like we can understand what is inside of our conscious through our body. That's kind of how I work with the body in my sessions. Okay, you're in a situation and you feel like your palms are sweaty and your heart's racing. What does that indicate? The body is believing there's a threat to your survival. Okay, what do you feel like is threatening? Okay, so then we get to the belief, which is when, I was 2 years old and my mom yelled at me, I believed when somebody's mad, it means that I'm unsafe, whatever the story is. But it's like that was carried in the body. And the body is the thing that keeps living that out. So this whole unconscious, it's so interesting, because for me, I felt like I've had very little connection with my body. I've got an undefined spleen, not even a gate. I've got an undefined sacral, undefined root. I don't have a lot of physicality in my awareness. A lot of mental stuff going on. A lot of throat stuff going on. I'm chatty. But this awareness of my body has been something that I guess I've third-lined a lot. Like, I've really learned to understand what's going on through the body in this way where there's been a lot of things that have gone wrong, that have not felt good, that have been there to be unraveled, to show me what I've actually been carrying inside of me, especially because my entire emotional wave, my ego, my solar plexus, that's all unconscious as well. So I've had a lot speak through my body that has been very confusing to my conscious mind. And I think that's probably why I've been led down this route to understand health and the body and the unconscious through these logical, maybe systems, German medicine and things like that. Even human design, I feel like, is incredibly, it's changed my life to be able to understand why there is this disconnect or this difficulty in understanding and feeling things sometimes. These lenses and these frameworks, I really feel like have the capacity to give somebody access to themselves. If you understand how to listen to your body, you can actually listen. If you don't understand the language, or if you don't understand what even to listen for, if you don't understand what is the body is capable of, what it actually holds, you don't know where to go. You don't know really, it really is the disconnect, that ignorance, I think, because we believe we're our mind so much of the time. And then we just try and, it's actually, this is really funny. This is like the polarity thing. This is like the feminine and masculine. This is like if the masculine, the mind, doesn't actually understand the what's going on in the feminine, the body, the earth, there can't be harmony. And there is really this top-down hierarchy of let's get rid of your symptoms, let's force you into resolution, let's just, take the medication to make you stop making noises. And it doesn't actually bring true health without the harmony between the two, without the understanding between the two. So yeah, I feel like we're alive in a really exciting time because there is so much conversation around this. And I feel like there's a lot of reclamation going on in that space, which is so cool.
Isn't that interesting that like this science, modern medicine, which is very masculine, very logical, really all it does, pharmaceutically speaking, is shut up the body.
Yeah.
And if we look at that from, the masculine to the feminine, it's like the masculine just like, shut up, be quiet. There's a parallel there. Interesting.
Yeah, totally. And so you can kind of see why the crunchy mum, breakaway has happened, the free birth, and we're just going to do it on our own. And I don't necessarily subscribe to either. I feel like Germany medicine is an interesting combination of the two because it is using esoteric awareness, really, but it's also using the medical system when necessary. So it's this harmony between the two. Okay, is it something that is going to burden your body so much that we'd like to support it in softening that? Cool. How can we do that? Okay, we'll use this and this, targeted, specific, for a time, supports the body. Great. Rather than like, we don't know what's going on, so we're just going to dump a bunch of toxins in there and like hope for the best. Or we're not going to go at all. We're not going to get involved at all. And we're just going to do it the hard way on our own and figure it out through trial and error. And, that works out for some people. And I think that there's maybe enough wisdom out there but it's hard to access, right? Because a lot of the people who have gone outside of the mainstream medicine have not been accessible to people. It's not like you can just go and get your local witch doctor because they've been penalized and they've been sent to Mexico to run their practice from somewhere that's not going to put them in jail. So our access to people who could support us outside of the mainstream medicine is not necessarily as smooth as it could be. But yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, it certainly is. And things are changing so fast that, who knows where we're going to be in, a couple of years, what it's going to look like. So maybe let's take it a little more into the human design realm, because I know that's a big part of your work and what you talk about. So I'd love to connect the dots between the health and wellness side and how you see human design helping with that, how coming into alignment, with your true self and working with the mechanics energetically, how you're naturally designed to work. How does that play a role in someone being healthy?
Oof. And this is a good one because I feel like I've third lined this very thoroughly. So I spent many, many years of my life pursuing health, like fixes, things to help me heal. And the thing that I needed to heal was actually listening to my inner authority, which is my emotional wave, right? This is, man, am I ready for this conversation? Basically, when I found human design, I was married. And I had been in this relationship for 8.5 years, and I had progressively gotten sicker and sicker, right? And I had probably within a year in the relationship felt like this is, I need to break the bond here. So I stayed 8.5 years, and I had some incredible, we traveled a lot. I had some really beautiful experiences, but physically I became more and more unwell. And I went through everything. I went through Chinese medicine. I went through, what are those biohacking doctors that take your bloods but then give you nutrients? I went through Arvigo therapy. I had a lot of hormonal things going on and whatnot. And the amount of money that I threw at my health and the amount of supplements that I had, like I was in whole drawers of them. I learned an incredible amount about health. And when I discovered human design, and human design was like, by the way, you have a emotional process, an emotional wave, and it's going to guide you through life. And at that point, I had shut it down. I had numbed my emotional side so much that I couldn't read books that were like emotional at all. I started reading thrillers, like Norwegian thrillers, detective stories and stuff, because I just couldn't touch emotions. I wasn't writing music anymore. I had zero creative capacity. I didn't want to listen to music. I went through years of not listening to any music. I had basically shut down my experiential side so heavily that when I discovered human design and it was telling me all this stuff, I think the first reading I had, she was getting me to feel my solar plexus and feel like, okay, how does it feel? Is it? And it was so sore and so tense and so tight. And I think what allowed me to get that disconnected was because it's a wide split. It's an unconscious emotional wave, no hanging gates. It's just a solar plexus on its own, unconscious. So for me, I had to develop this capacity to feel myself in subtle ways and to really pay attention to that. It's so easy for me to override that with my head and my ajna and my throat and my G center. Like part of me is just going off and doing my own thing. And then I've got my feeling emotional state. And so for me, and my mum has said this too, actually, she feels human design probably saved my life because I would have just, with my defined ego, I would have just pushed through and pushed through and pushed through and then gotten to like 45 and probably died of some sort of health thing because you can't suppress the body forever, right? And if we talk about the body as the unconscious, my emotional state really being embedded in that unconscious and how much I disconnected from that. And I was the masculinized mind forcing the body to just do its thing, take this supplement. And I don't feel very sensitive to things because I don't feel my body. So I would take massive doses of all sorts of things, being one of them, whatever it was that I went down the rabbit hole to say, this is going to fix your problems. For my situation, it didn't. And I feel like without the awareness of who you are and how you function, you can't utilize well another person's resources because you don't actually have a context for those resources to land in. So when I understood myself through this lens of you're actually a deeply emotional person, you're not always going to feel that. You need to pay attention. I've actually thought, I haven't tried this yet, but I've thought about doing like microdosing mushrooms fairly regularly to give my brain space and my body a voice. I'm a third line. I'm going to test these things out. But like for me to not have that context, I think most of my life I spent trying to be somebody else. Somebody who doesn't have mood swings, somebody who doesn't have downs in her wave, somebody who, whatever the story is, like because I'm so mentally defined, I can have ideas and then believe them and then live them out with my little defined ego. But did I feel successful? Did I feel well? Was I healthy? Was I myself? I had gotten to the point where I was like a fragment of the person who I used to be growing up as a homeschooler, flitting around doing my thing. And one of my closest friends, I've known her since we were both 12. She essentially said that to me as I separated from my ex-husband and went my way. She was like, wow, I had no idea, because I'd been living overseas for a very long time. I had no idea that this is the state that you were in, but you really are like a fragment of who I remember you to be. And I think that is really the gift that human design can offer. It can offer you yourself back to you, because nothing that it told me was, oh my gosh, really? I'm like that? Like all of the stuff that was brought to the forefront and put in front of me, it was just me. I recognized myself. But I think because we, especially projectors, we can constantly be looking outwards. It's so hard to see who we actually are. It's so hard to be aware of ourselves in the way that's necessary for that, I want to say, sort of like self-reorientation. We struggle with that. It's a design flaw. well, I don't actually believe it's a design flaw. It's a feature. It means that we need each other to rely. Like we need a, I believe all projectors need a projector mentor, because for somebody else to sit there, let you unfold in front of them and then go, okay, what are you doing here? Sort that out here. Come back into what you need. That's probably the most healing thing that I've experienced in my life, to be seen like that. I've completely forgotten what the question was, but there's a ramble for you.
No, that's great. Yeah, the question was the original question was just like how human design plays a role in your health and well-being when you can come into alignment with who you are. So I think you pretty much hit it
Perfect.
on point. And I resonate so much with your story because I just got divorced like a year ago after 11 years of marriage.
Wow.
And it was very much, to a generator. And, with I had come to some conclusion, well, maybe I'm still developing it, but, with the defined ego,
Yeah.
realizing how much I was committed to making it work.
Um,
When if I look back and think, realizing from the beginning, it probably didn't really work and wasn't correct, but it was like, oh, well, I'm committed. And, even with my undefined solar plexus, it was like I was avoiding the emotions of, potentially rejecting the other person, not wanting to hurt the other person. So yeah, there's so much there that it's like, okay, I realize now. And the learning going forward, how much, being splenic myself, how much these decisions like this, if I don't listen to my spleen, how much they really do affect my health.
yeah.
Because my spleen is there to tell me, hey, this isn't healthy. And I'm just like, fuck off, I'm going to do what I want. Like,
Man, it's such a combo, right? With an ego involved. I feel like the ego is second in charge, but it tries to take over all the time. It's like, no, but I want this. But it's like, yeah, but it's really bad for you. You have to kind of like, you have to salute the spleen, or in my place, it's solar plexus at some point. But it can get real funky about it.
Yeah. And I don't know if maybe, because the ego doesn't have any awareness. And I wonder myself if the not self mind will kind of use that ego as like a power, right? As a boost, that energy to commit to it. But I think it's also part of the process, and I realized that, okay, this is why it's so important to make correct decisions, because once I do, I'm going to commit to that.
Yeah.
Because as a projector, we have, Ra talks about like we have a 7-year process to really, to involve ourselves in. And then, if you have a defined ego, even more, you're kind of committed to that process. And as a third line being on top of that, we're working it out to say, okay, does this work? No, how about this way? No, how about this way? Until eventually we're like, okay, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah. And that's where like I sometimes fight my third line, but I'm also grateful for it in the sense that like, I'm aware that it's going to be messy. So most of the time I try and just throw myself in there, and I'm like, go on, figure it out. Like the quicker you do, the quicker you're going to find out what works. So just go and fuck it up, And there's a lot of peace in that. There's so much self-acceptance that comes with the human design lens. And I think that self-acceptance and peace with yourself is where kind of health stems from. And I'm not saying it's easy, because like you say, to follow your spleen in some pretty massive decisions, like for to be leaving a relationship that has been so interwoven over so many years, that's not an easy or nice or fun or light decision to make. I often tell people, like, don't start with the big things. Maybe start with what you want to eat tonight. I don't know. Build yourself up to that, because for me, it was a pretty quick process, because I'd had such clarity for so many years through my emotional wave. I just suppressed it. When I realized what the voice was actually bringing me, I was like, okay, I have to choose myself at this point. I've trialed this for this long, you know, do I want to continue? Nope. Hope that's clear. But it's a radical way to live. The human design experiments it's a radical way to live, because it requires an authenticity of you that most people have no idea how to handle. So it's going to completely reorganize your life if you embark on it. That's my disclaimer warning. But it's also an invite, because what else do you want to be? Do you want to be a fake version of yourself? What's that going to get you? You know?
Nothing. Yeah. Yeah, it's radical because there's no other template to follow. It's like you're a unique, differentiated being. And if it's interesting, the actual word radical, if we look at the etymology, it means to like get back to the root.
Oh, I like that.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. So like you're actually getting down to your like root, your base of who you are, right? So to be radical is
Totally. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of being a projector, I love I listened to your projector, I think it was your Projector Success podcast that you put out recently.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And in that, you said that a projector finds success by bringing success to others. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, I love projectors. Man, we're such weirdos. Yeah, I feel there are 4 main types in human design, and the type is really the aura, like the energetic presence that you bring to a space. And for projectors, we're this penetrating, deeply connective, focused aura that really absorbs the other person. We work one-on-one, right? And I believe, through our energetic presence, we're really not able to be successful on our own. If you look at a generator and how they're built, they have they have this energetic capacity that renews itself each day. They have access to this builder energy, and they go do stuff with it, and then they feel satisfied. Now that could be living in a cabin in the woods and carving wood carvings, and they'd be satisfied, like they'd love it if they were hermit like or whatever. For a projector, I don't see that ever being very successful, unless maybe it's in a writing form and they're a writer and they impact people through their books or whatever. But for a projector to really experience success, and in my opinion, to experience themselves, because your embodiment is success, and to feel that is just you feeling yourself, that comes through recognition, invitation, and receptivity and reciprocity of another person. And it's such a classic thing to look at guiding, right? So you're a projector, you're here to guide energy. So you have a client, they come to you and they're sitting in front of you and they're like, man, I don't know about this thing, and I'm really struggling with this thing. And you have the right wisdom because it's a correct interaction. How you feel after that interaction. I mean, how do you feel after an interaction like that? I think you do some client work yourself.
I do, yeah.
So as a projector, how do you feel after an interaction where somebody has been nourished and has their life improved by you?
I feel just like full of energy and like, all right.
It's an energetic source, right? Even outside of the monetary part of it, it's an energetic source. I was joking to one of my projector clients, it's like, you feel like God, you but you have this feeling of like, this is what I'm here for, right? And my heart hurts a little bit for the projectors who really don't have that space yet. They're there, they're a resource of some sort, whatever it is. They haven't yet got this access to other people that need them as their resource. And they're actually missing out on experiencing being who they are. Like, they probably haven't experienced that yet. I know that I hadn't experienced me until I had sat with a client who was a correct client for me, had invited me, had paid me, and went away from the session going like, oh my God, that was just the best thing that I'd ever had. And I can't believe blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that right there, that's what I've been studying for my entire life. That's what I've been going through third line experiences for my entire life. That's like, and it's not even what am I trying to say? It's so outside of career success. It's so outside of monetary success. I know Sam Zagar spoke about this recently, but like success is a experiential feeling of you being you, in my opinion. And that's going to look so different for everybody else. And I believe, I feel like when we're talking about aliveness, I don't know if can I go into my workshop that I've recently released, or shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I have been talking a little bit about the anatomy of arousal and how it's different for projectors. So I've been studying energetics through the Taoist lens, like sexual energy and moving energy and building energy and creating and how to actually utilize energy in your body for years now. And it's been a shit show. It's been really hard because I've been trying to work with a non-sacral body, and what I've become more and more aware of as I've been developing my own concepts around this has been the fact that aliveness for a projector is so different. That state that you are in after a client session when you feel so good, that actually is your arousal capacity. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to know how to harness that, and you're not going to prioritize that in your life. Like I was talking to a client earlier today, and she was talking to me about this process that she's developed where she sort of sits with herself and writes in the morning and how she feels and how much content she's generating through it and all this. And I was like, that is a self-pleasure practice for a projector, because what she's experiencing is the delight of herself, the delight of her capacity. She's really describing her definition, like the way that she was talking, her creative capacity, all this sort of stuff. That sensation of enjoying being you is what I'm talking about with this arousal process of a projector. And why it's so important is because if you don't understand that as your baseline, you don't know how to get back to that when you get amplified. If you're around somebody that feels crazy intense and that feels really good, you won't actually know that your own arousal is way over here in this weird thing. And like we're freaks in some way, but it's still the life force energy moving through us in a really pleasurable way. We won't know how to engage with that and actually interact with, harness, and build with that if we associate aliveness and energetic capacity with a sacral sensation, right? So for a projector, most projectors don't actually even know how to be turned on because they've never actually experienced themselves yet. If you've not sat with somebody and been compensated for your own guidance, you haven't yet experienced what it feels like to be what a projector is meant to be here for. So many of us, and I've lived in, decades of my life as a sacral, as a manifestor as well, the amount of businesses I've started, friggin' hell. I've lived outside of my natural state. It's kind of like a funny thing coming home to that, because just sitting with somebody and guiding them, it feels too easy to be true, right? Like, I don't know if you feel the same, but it's like, it's just me. I've had times in my business where I've tried to be better at my system and I've tried to do it this way and I've tried to really kind of have the structure and make sure that but when I sit back and I'm just me, it's the most amazing experience for both parties that you can possibly imagine. And that's where I really believe for a projector, your true success comes in these moments where you are making somebody else more successful. Because people come to you, they come to me, they come for improvement, they're coming for help, they're coming for alchemy, they're coming to shift something in their life. Maybe they're just coming for the support to be held as they do the shifting, but they're still coming for that, right? And yeah, I really wonder, I mean, I'm sure you and I both know what it's like to not be able to offer that, and how no matter how much money you have, it's not a good feeling. You don't feel successful. Now, I'm not saying that money doesn't come through that, because it absolutely does. If we talk about sexual energy, money, arousal, all that stuff, it flows through the magnetism. And we as projectors need to understand where our magnetism actually lies. And that's why I think it's important to realize these moments where we're actually completely switched on and we're flowing. And they're not going to be the same as what is going to be taught in all of these different spheres where they talk about energetic cultivation and management and things like that. But yeah, if you know where to look for that, success really is in those moments. And that's also where something Ra says about success that I find really interesting. He says for a projector, success is when not being an energy type is no longer a problem. And I think it's so simple. It's like we have these ideas of what the empire is that we're wanting to build and what success is going to be, outside, culturally, structurally, whatever it looks like. But really, how do you feel in your everyday? Do you have the capacity to have the softness and the rest that you need? Do you have the capacity to study uninterrupted the things that you love? Do you have the capacity to offer guidance to people that will compensate you? Whatever that leads to, who cares? Because that's you succeeding, right in that state there. I think when we get stuck in the mind and the not self of the open centers, enough's not enough, right? That's the sacral thing. What are you chasing? Are you successful now? And when you feel in that state of success and you can actually enjoy it because you're present enough to enjoy it, everything else flows from that. You're a different person in the present moment when you're in that state. And that's where you can actually have the reactions and create the reality that you feel good in, rather than this kind of mental thing that you're chasing for some reason.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just going to soak that in for a minute because that's so good.
See, I feel alive right now talking about that stuff. It's so fun.
I know, I can feel it. Yeah, that reminds me of, I had a realization. My daughter's a generator. I remember having this moment one time. She came and showed me. She's such an artist. She actually has the channel of the beat 214.
Oh, cool.
And she's such an individual. She's just marching to her own beat, 100%. And I had the privilege of obviously being her father, but then also sharing art, creativity, making her do a art class with me online, and at first she was like, I don't need to do this, I already know how to draw, and she's 7 years old, and I'm like yeah, you do know how to draw, but we can always learn more, there's always more to learn. And once she got into it, then now she's using all the techniques, all the shading, and now she's showing me all this stuff. But anyway, I had this moment. She came and showed me her drawing. I was and then she ran away and was so excited. And I was just looking at her. I'm like, I wish I had as much energy as you do. I could get so much done. But then it hit me I get to, I may not be the one, I'm not here to do things like that, but I get to help guide the people who are, to doing things. And even more recently, I had this vision of what does it mean to be a projector? And one of the keynotes is we're here to see, right? Yeah. We're here to see things. And what do we see? And we can project what we see for the generators to go and do it and make it happen, right? To go and build our vision that we see. And I was like, well, that's so beautiful, because I see a lot, especially with my channel of judgment.
Yeah. Switch that puppy on.
That's wrong. That's wrong. We're building shit wrong. All our buildings are
knock it down.
Yeah, knock
totally.
it down.
And that's, yeah, absolutely. There'll be generators that have a sacral response to what you have visioned. That's the perfect harmony, the synergy, right? I actually want to use my energy. Give me something. Give me something. Oh, that cool. Love it. There's no.
Yeah, and it's not that we don't actually. It's not that we can't do things that are appropriate and that are correct for us to do. Mm-hmm. We just don't have the sustaining energy to do it like a generator does. But I think coming to terms with that, because the conditioning is real, right? I grew up with 3 manifesting generator siblings.
Oh.
Generator mother.
Good times.
Not sure what my stepdad is. Generator probably. But anyway, yeah, the conditioning is hard. And even now, even Like I recently had a breakthrough in just my own healing and like developing this process that I want to use with people to help guide them through it. And even now I'm feeling that like my mind is in that habit of like, okay, I got to hurry up and develop this and make it happen. And then it's like, no, I got to sit back, because if I get into that, if I birth this in that way out of a not self capacity, then it's never going to be correct.
Yeah.
You know, even if it was something that I feel like my soul gave me, you know, if I take it and if I don't stay in alignment and develop it naturally and just kind of just learn to be like, okay, this really isn't mine, even though I'm here to steward it. So it's like, how do I watch it unfold and develop and yeah, get rid of that conditioning that says like, you got to make it happen, you know, nothing, no one else is gonna do it for you, you know, which is true, but it's like the universe is gonna do it for me, you know,
Yeah,
essentially.
totally.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had this, I think from that arousal workshop, I had this bit about like most projectors aren't actually even able to wait for the invite, because they're out there bargaining for energy and attention. It's and this is why I'm so passionate about projectors coming back to that actual non-sacral arousal, which is just you enjoying being you. Because when you're having a good time being who you are, you don't actually need to be invited to anything, and that's when you get invited, right? But it's like that's actually waiting for the invite. And that's where, for so many of us projectors, it's like, well, we're attention starved. We want to be noticed. We want to be invited. We want to be part of things. Like, we want to be involved. There's this, I want to say like the sacral jealousy, where the sacral has this buzz around them, this warm, magnetic, buzzing aura, and they're just bumping into each other and they're doing their thing. I know that's like an oversimplification, but for a projector needing to be invited to, because it's such a penetrative experience for people, there's this feeling of like, well, I'm not involved in that. I don't really belong. I'm not part of what's going on in life right now. And so there can be this real desire to be drawn into that. That only really exists when somebody doesn't enjoy being who they are. And I'm not always in this state. Sometimes I hate being me, but I've bounced in and out of it enough now where it's like I can take so much pleasure in I feel like all of my meme posts, that is that vibe. I'm having such a good time. Nobody else understands some of those memes, but I'm having a really good time. And if more projectors can realize them, actually experience energetically in their body, then there is much less grasping and grabbing, because they're actually just involved in their life. And a lot of the time, because of the way that our aura is and how we're focused on the other, we don't have a very good framework to experience ourselves. That's where human design is invaluable for all projectors, because you have at least a framework of where you are, where you aren't. Okay, you can start to feel that. You've got cognitive definition, great. You probably like thinking about things in a specific way. Awesome. Get to know that. Get to enjoy that. Okay, you've got a spleen, you've got an ego. Cool. What does that feel like in your body? What does it feel like to have a swagger and to have instincts? Starting to take actual delight in who you are, it makes you able to wait for the invite. I think there's this torturous aspect for a lot of projectors where it's like, I just want to get involved. And it's a really uncomfortable thing to wait. I'm speaking from experience here. I've not had a good time for parts of my experience because I just want to get involved and I want to start my things and I'm on my own and invite me to the party, damn it. But like over time, I've been able to develop this, probably through my studies and things that I've been exploring more and more. I'm enjoying the fact that I'm designed this way. I'm enjoying the fact that I've got this subtle, subconscious emotional process going all the time. Like I've started to be able to actually enjoy being me. And that's what I hope to be able to offer a lot more projectors, because that's the state that people can actually see you. If they're not seeing your definition lit up, what are they seeing? They're seeing the not self. Who wants to invite a not self? Projector. Nobody. It's shit. Tastes like shit. Feels awful.
Very, very bitter.
So to be able to, I don't believe that it takes a whole 7 years to get to this point. I think there's targeted ways, and people like the archive are working on things in the physical body, and I feel like the inquiry process has that capacity as well to really be able to make somebody feel good being themselves, because that's when you can actually involve yourself in life correctly from that state. It's so important.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think I made a video about this recently, but just getting into I think it's why it's so important for projectors to be in their own aura
Yes.
so often, especially while they're waiting. And it's because for me, we need to really understand who we are without any other, or at least the minimal amount of conditioning forces, right? We always have the cosmos there, but yeah, it's critical. I actually, it's interesting. So I have 4 dormant gates in my sacral. So I've realized, looking back as far as I could, that like I haven't had much time without it on or without it off.
Yeah.
And I had last month actually, and I think this is part of what initiated this healing breakthrough that I had, is that I had a week with it not on at all. And
You can
it's
finally
because
take a break.
Yeah, so I was like, I put it on my calendar, and I'm like, I'm not doing anything.
That's
Like, I need to really know what this feels like. And
Yeah.
so I spent like a lot of time just going out by the creek and meditating. And it's crazy because I really felt like it just kind of like, it was like this, like calm in my body.
Yeah, right.
And that sacral buzz just went away, and I was like, oh, wow. I don't know if I've ever noticed this before.
Yeah, can I ask you, was that uncomfortable? Because I've had this experience with some of my projector clients where it's like, I give them this homework to really come home to themselves, and they don't like it because it feels like a downgrade of energy. It's like, oh, that's me. Was it uncomfortable at all? Or was it like a good experience of like, okay, well, there's less pressure, there's less drive to actually go buzzing around?
Yeah, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was unfamiliar for sure. But it was interesting that I could like physically, viscerally feel the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely different. And it's actually interesting because I think I felt better than I did like during that time. And I don't know. I don't know if I can explain. I know I'm still integrating and still trying to understand it. Right. Like literally, it was like that week. Well, Jupiter was activating it in gate 53. It was retrograde. And then it was like during that week is when it switched back. So Jupiter's now back in gate 53. And then I think in like 2 weeks, Uranus goes into gate 20, hooking up to my 34. And that's going to be in there for like a year.
An entire year. Oh, God.
Yeah, like 3420. So I'm not sure when the next break I'll get is. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. And it was really cool to just really sit in my own energy without that sacral being on. And really, I think what it brought me is like, okay, here's the contrast. Here's what it looks like to be able to calm down and just relax and be off, from that sacral energy. Now I still have the root and the ego, but yeah, it was a fun experience. I'll probably talk more about it once I like integrate it more and gain more wisdom around it. But yeah, it's fun to be able to be aware of these things, which is one of the things I love about human design is like, okay, now we can be aware of it at least and see what happens,
Totally. That's like such a 1-3 thing as well. I'm going to test this out and get some data. No, but honestly, isn't that the best thing about life, to be able to explore this stuff? Like,
Yeah.
You literally have a science laboratory. I mean, you are a science lab, essentially. You can do this experiment and you can discover things, and it's so cool. I love that you just wiped your calendar and was like, all right, we're non-sacral. Actually non-sacral for this entire.
Actually non-sacred.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, it was it was a good experience for sure. Well, I mean, I know we could probably go forever. I'm starting to get a little raspy in my open throat.
Yeah. Well,
Um, but yeah, this has been so lovely, Emma. We'll have to do it again because I think there's a lot more we could talk about and explore. I think we're in alignment on a lot of things.
yeah, that's been really cool
But
to see. There's a lot of,
yeah,
I think we've explored a lot of similar things in different ways, which is nice. You can have some pretty decent convos.
yeah, I love comparing notes, comparing the experience
Yeah,
of each of our unique experiments.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Um,
This has been really, really fun.
yeah, you're welcome. Is there, if you want to share your work, I know, yeah, you have that projector arousal course. What else you got going on
Oh
that people
man,
can connect with you?
I'm constantly evolving. So something that Sam Zagar spoke about with the environments recently, I think it was her, about like, you bring the environment. I've really noticed that in my work. So last year I had a membership with women, and I've reopened it this year on school, and it's like a kitchens environment. So you're wet kitchens as well, right?
I am,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm basically building it like there is information there about this, my perspective of the arousal system for projectors. There's ways to start building a connection with yourself through all these things. But I also talk about, the inquiry work and the belief stuff and polarity stuff and relating. There's a lot of stuff in there that I'm really excited to explore with women that are evolving. And it's yeah, I've literally just opened it yesterday. So calling all the ladies for that. I also,
That's exclusively for ladies, right?
yeah, well, I don't know. I keep changing my mind because I'm like, there's so many interesting people I want to study to have them in there. But then I have to consider the fact of what somebody else is going to actually feel comfortable being involved in.
Yeah.
And I get that because I mean, I'm a third line. I'm like 3'5". Let's bump into everybody. Like, what's there to be afraid of? But to create the container that is actually a safe space for women to really go deep, I think I may also only have it as a projector woman thing because I'm so fascinated with the projector experience. Especially for
Yeah.
projector women, there can be kind of like a crippling sensitivity for a lot of projector women that doesn't need to be that way if we can kind of understand how that works and then actually create what we need out of life. So I have this membership that is definitely, if you're a projector woman, come and check it out. Even if you're not a projector, come and check it out because I might let you in anyway. I've got a workshop for all types around arousal because something that I see as part of the dysfunction in the world, I've probably got 1858 conditioning. So I'm sorry, I'm like amplifying that. But it's this outsourcing of turn on and arousal. And when you think of sexual energy and how much it has been capitalized on for a very long time, a lot of people don't actually recognize they have an intrinsic capacity for it. And so it's velcroed to external sources, things like porn and whatnot, but even just fantasy. If you're resourcing your aliveness externally, you're not going to have the power that you have the capacity for. So I have an all types arousal workshop as well. That's in a link in my bio. I think I pass those over to you, but I'm trying to like put a little bit more of what I'm aware of out there because I have a lot of things to say, but with my passive brain, I can forget I know things. So I'm sort of resourcing what clients are drawing out of me and what people are responding to that is valuable, and I'm trying to make that available to people. So I'm doing these workshops and having them there for people to access. And then I work one-on-one over a more lengthy period of time with, I've got both men and women currently, but I work sort of more focused on women because that's my experience. So I have sort of a 3-month container that people can come and unravel things with me over. So yeah, there's multiple ways. Maybe it'll change. the best way to if you're curious is just to come and say hi to me, because then you'll get the most up-to-date whatever I'm up to. But yeah, I'm excited. There's some really good things happening.
That sounds really cool. One last question to ask everybody. What is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything?
Ooh.
And it could be playful, it could be serious, it could be one word.
Okay,
whatever comes in that. Haagen-Dazs.
Thank you so much, Ben. You're a legend.
It's amazing. Thank you, Emma. Have a good one.